Okay, so in the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about the events communication pattern to upgrade your skills in your day-to-day development, okay? Let's get started with the agenda. We're going to cover issues with existing communication patterns. Then we'll see how events can solve these problems. We'll see an example. We'll see issues with namespacing. We'll talk about the pitfalls that you should avoid. And we'll see the benefits of actually using it. Okay, so let's get started. After years of experience working with React, I've started thinking that the only way to communicate between your components is using the tools provided by React. Now, these are the known communication patterns. You've got parent-child, child-parent, state management libraries, context, and you've got plenty more. But each one has its own issues. You might have issues with tight coupling. It takes a lot of effort to set up like state management libraries. Or you might be dependent on outside libraries and solutions. Now, this effectively puts you in framework jail. And by that I mean that you can only build your component relationships based on the tools provided by React. Now, I want you to break free. I want you to get out from your comfort zone just a little bit today and start to embrace a framework agnostic mindset when it comes to your component communication. Instead of looking for solutions on outside, like installing NPM packages to solve these exact issues, I want you to start looking for solutions on the inside. And by that I mean using the browser native APIs and vanilla JavaScript, nothing special. This all eventually leads us to using events. And once you start accepting the idea, the fact that you want to use events during your daily development, some questions will start popping up. Now, you might ask yourself, can I send custom events? What is the right way to send events in React? Maybe it is an anti-pattern to work with events in React. When and how? These are all of the questions we are going to answer right now. Okay, so let's learn the right way to send events in React. Okay? Here I've got the send event function, which is a simple function that accepts the event ID and a details payload, which is sent with the event. As you can see, I'm using the browser's native API for the custom event constructor to create an all-purpose event that can accept a payload when you send the event, and I'm making sure that the event bubbles the same way as any other event bubbles in your applications, all the way up the DOM. Now, finally, I'm dispatching the events using the window global object. And I'm doing so to make sure that the information is available for any component in your application that wishes to listen for events. Now, the other side of the coin is listening to events. So let's see a custom hook called useActOnEvent. This custom hook accepts an event ID, the callback function, and the dependencies. Now, inside, there is nothing special. I'm using the useEffect hook. I'm listening for an event using the addEventListener, and I'm making sure to clean up after myself using the removeEventListener. And finally, I'm passing the dependencies to the useEffect to make sure that all of the information inside is always up to date. Also make sure that you are listening on the window object because that's where we are sending our events. We want it to be available globally for our application. Okay, so let's see how to actually use it. Here we've got an example for a filters infrastructure, a filters component that its main purpose is to handle selecting and deselecting filters for sorting. Now, on the right side, you can see that we've got the pseudo filter code for that filters infrastructure. It deals mainly with the selected filters, and when I'm using events, I'm making sure to send an event after each change in the selected filters. Now, this is extremely important and useful for your daily development, as you don't need to worry about who needs this information or adding any extra logic to make it available for other components. You are just sending an event with all the relevant information, and if you need to listen to it, you can just use the custom hook we've just seen. Finally, the custom hook we've just seen called useActOnEvent, it simply receives the event ID currently for the filters change and a callback function that you can run and get the latest payload that was sent in the event and run whatever action that you want to perform. Okay, so it's that simple. We've got a simple send event function and a custom hook, nothing special, and that was the missing communication pattern in your daily development. Now, the events communication pattern is not here to replace your existing communication patterns. It is here as an enhancement for your components and your infrastructures. Okay? We'll see a few examples soon. Okay, so namespacing. One of the issues you will encounter when using events is that you will have duplicate event names from your own infrastructure that you are developing. Now, this is especially important when using micro-frontend architecture, as you've got multiple applications sharing the same DOM. And if they use the same infrastructures, they will even send the same event IDs. So to fix it, we'll go with a generic to specific concept when it comes to naming. If I take the example of the micro-frontend application, I might start with the application name, which is the most generic concept in your name, and then I'll go and be more specific one step at a time. So I go into the feature, which is the table, and finally the on-row change, which is the action. I'll do the same for regular applications. I'll start with the feature name, and then I'll go specific directly into the action. That's how you avoid using the duplicate event IDs in your infrastructures. Let's talk about a pitfall that you need to avoid when working with events. Now, there might be a case where a parent component that receives the event will update its own state before the child component has completed its own state updates. Now, let's see exactly what I mean by that. Here we've got two components. We've got the parent component and the child component. Now, the child component here sends an event to the parent component, but also updates its own state with simple set state at the same time. Now, the parent component receives the event, and inside, it updates its own state at the same time, but it finishes before the child component has had a chance to finish the state update. This, as a result, will cause the entire child componentry to be torn down and recreated from scratch by React. Now, we've got two options where we want to avoid it, okay? The first is that the component should only send the event after the state has changed. Now, you've got two options. They're quite similar, but the first option is simply using the use effect hook, listening for state changes, and after the state has changed, you simply send the event. Option B is quite similar, but it's more for multiple events at the same time. So we'll use an events queue, which will receive the events. Again, it will listen for changes with use effect and a dependencies array, and after each change, it will dispatch all of the events in the queue. Let's cover option B. As you can see here, I've got a simple events queue created with a reference, and I'm creating a function called queue event to populate the queue with the new events. I'm making sure to pass the relevant event ID or type and the event details, which is the event's payload. Now, I'm creating a custom hook, which is quite simple, again, using the use dispatch events. It receives the events queue and the dependencies that you want to listen on. A simple use effect inside, just checking if there are any events currently in the queue. And after each change to the dependencies, we're going to run and send all of the events one after another in a simple for each loop, and making sure to clear the queue once I'm finished for the next events to come. Okay, so now let's go back to the filters infrastructure. We've got the area that we want to add a filter in your filters infrastructure. And as you can see, I'm queuing an event called add filter with the payload of the latest filter that is being added. Now inside, I'm making sure to update the selected filters because it's a filter infrastructure. I'm here to manage the selected filters of the infra. And finally, I'm using the custom hook we've just created, use dispatch events, and passing the relevant events queue and the dependencies, which is the selected filters I wish to listen on. Now, after each change in your dependencies, all of the events that were queued will be sent one after another. Okay, the second solution is quite simple. If your application is currently at rest, it means that it is safe to send events in your application. Now, what do I mean by at rest? I mean that there are no state changes or updates that are supposed to happen at the same time. Let's see an example. Here we've got a simple element for a table row that deals with the onClick handler. It passes the onRow click handler callback function with the row information, but I'm making sure to send an event with the row click and the specific selected row the user has clicked on. Now, as you can see, there are no state updates for the table going on here. This means that you can safely dispatch or send the events throughout your application, and now any component or infra that might need this information can simply access it using the useActOnEvent custom hook we've just seen. Okay, so this pitfall is not a common scenario, okay? And I'm here to make sure that you can be rest assured that this will not happen, that it happened to me once in the last 2 years, so it's pretty safe to use. And in case you do encounter the pitfall, you now know exactly how to solve it, okay? Let's see the benefits. So the first is simple and easy setup. You've got the send event function and the custom hook, useActOnEvent, so you are not dependent on any external libraries, okay? The second option, the second benefit, is that you don't need to create a shared location in memory just to pass information around between components. Now, I don't know about you, but how many times have you created a context just to pass information around between your components? I know I've done this many times over the years, and it never felt right. Finally, the biggest benefit comes from an infrastructure mindset point of view. Your infrastructures can now work in complete isolation. This is a major benefit. Now, as you can see, I've got a component here for an infrastructure of table, filters, reports, whatever infrastructure is inside your application. Now, it can receive events from outside and perform internal operations on the inside of the infrastructure simply by listening for events. Now, you can be creative, but there is a simple list here. You might create a modal that works in complete isolation and simply listens for events. So it might open and close based on these events. You might create a table. You can move to different pages of the pagination. You might, I don't know, clear all the filters, generate a report. If you've got a use case for an infrastructure, you can add events inside of it to support additional functionality. And finally, the other aspect is that your infrastructures can now even send events from inside to components on the outside. So you can pass whatever information you need, and you don't have to go and jump through any hoops or create any additional logic to pass that information around. Okay, so you've unlocked the events communication pattern today, and I'm here to recommend it as a best practice for your day-to-day development. Thank you.